Welcome. My name's Dan Fabrizio. I'm the founder and president of Sports Insights. I'd like to thank you for attending our data-driven betting systems webinar. As you can see, my contact information is in front of you. It's Dan at Sports Insights. If you'd like to contact me directly on email, ask me questions, suggest different webinar topics or something you really want to ask, and it'll be more appropriate that way. I would definitely, for webinar questions, use the chat feature, which is located with the webinar software that you're using. That's the way the questions will get to me in real time, and I'll be able to respond to them towards the end of the session. So I'd like to get going in the presentation and jump on to just kind of give you a 1,000-foot overview of what we're going to hit here. We're going to go over the state of the betting data mining and stats and analysis and kind of the best practices out there. We'll actually get involved in creating betting systems. I'll highlight one during the talk, and then at the end I'll actually spend some time dedicated to formulating a couple from the ground up. And then, of course, we'll answer questions towards the end, anything specific about the presentation that you might have. Finally, we have a Bet Labs. We're offering all attendees a $99 Bet Labs membership. What that is, it'll give you access to the tools that I'm going to walk through and present inside there, use in this presentation. That includes membership includes all sports that we have, stats for, which is all the major U.S. sports. First and second half against the spread, as well as game data. That's a full membership. It's not limited to one or two things. We really want people to be able to take actionable items from this webinar and use them. You need an analysis tool, and Bet Labs will give you that. So, data-driven betting systems. They're defined. I'm defining them as using historical data to forecast future outcomes. So what we're doing is looking back at data and using computers to do it, asking it some interesting question and seeing what the results come out as. You'll see it's sometimes referred to as data mining, which is basically looking for patterns in data, and that's really been an exploding field in the last decade. For other fields, now it's coming into sports betting because really you're taking advantage of what computers can do. They can aggregate data, they can put it into a database, and then you can quickly manipulate that data and ask it questions and run a query against it and see what the results are. Back in the day of paper and pencils, it was very difficult to do. Now with a few stroke of the keys, you can look back at thousands of records and look for a pattern that you would have expected to have found. Also, there's no emotion. It's emotionless. What that doesn't mean you don't get excited when you win or lose, or you really look at it as a long-term strategy and realize that there's bumps up and down through that year. We look at seasonality as being our defining characteristic of if we're winning or losing, not how we did last week, last night. It's how we've done over the course of the season. So big data in the cloud equal the perfect storm. Really, these are buzzwords you'll find everywhere now in the major media. You just can't watch a TV ad during a halftime of a game or whatever that's not going to mention that and how they're revolutionizing the world. Now, this is happening in the sports betting world too. I know they're buzzwords, but we're really cut to the chase. The explosion of sports data, which in our world would be the big data equivalent, it has happened and it is happening. It happened a few years ago with the explosion of fantasy. Tons of stats available. Everybody's tracking stuff like online, on-base percentage to, yards after catch and big plays, and you can get your hands on some really, really good data now. So that's there for the taking. Power to analyze it, that's the cloud. That's being able to tap into something that is so easy to use. You just click a few buttons and all the magic goes behind in this cloud. That's a tool like Bet Labs. Bet Labs sits on top of our database, Sports Insights database of information, which our stuff goes back approximately close to 10 years worth of betting percentages, betting data, opening, closing lines, other stuff like team stats to line movements. It just goes on and on from that point on. But you need a tool to manipulate. A lot of people will use Excel or try to use Excel. There's nothing wrong with that. It just requires more technical knowledge, and it's not nearly as robust or have as many features as a product like Bet Labs, which is specifically designed to take advantage of our database and quickly run these queries and take a non-technical user, somebody that has a great idea but didn't take a class in Excel, and they still want to answer their question. We'll look at questions like that in the preceding parts of the the webinar to figure out, where is that power. So the advantage now is to the smart bettor, a guy that can take advantage of those two intersecting worlds at this point, can go into data and can analyze it and ask it the right questions, intelligent questions, stuff that they're seeing in the real world that helps them look back. One of the things we'll look at is Thursday nights in the NFL. That's a new game. They've always played it Thursday night, usually early in the season. They'll do the Thanksgiving Day game, and now they have the opportunity, that game's once a week. Of course, there's a lot of scenarios that have never happened before, or happened a lot more than they did before. In this case, our theory was going to be, look at an NFL team on short rest. Wouldn't the home team have advantage? There's only 4 days to play that game until Sunday, till Thursday. The home team gets an extra day of preparation. That's 4 days versus 3 days for the visiting team. That's 75% more practice time. So you would think that they would, of course, have some kind of an edge. Now we want to see that if that's correct against the spread, and that's something that we can do quickly in Bet Labs and look back at our historical data to proof that out. So sticking with our analogy of the perfect storm, the evolution of big data in the cloud really will help rain money on you. And make you a more smarter, profitable sports bettor. Data is king. I think that's an important thing. Really, this is the foundation everything is built on. You can't do anything after that without having good data. You have to be excited or have clean database, have a clean database, and have the ability to manipulate it. Crap in, crap out is the old saying. So if your database is flawed, be it's got bad lines or incorrect information, ultimately you're going to get bad answers, which are going to lead you to make big mistakes. So it's important that you clean up your data, whatever database you're using. I suggest running it against another data source. A lot of people will trade data with someone else to help them clean it up instead of creating another source. Ideally, that source didn't come from the same place yours did, but somebody else got it from a different source. Say someone has ESPN's betting percentage or field goal percentages. Well, I'm going to use CBS's and take a look at it and compare the two and see if they're within a certain margin of error. Sample size is huge. As you'll find with data, you want more data so you can have larger sample size to regress your theory behind and see, feel more confident, get a better statistical signal from it or significance from it. Now, sample size is different camps of the field of school of thoughts here, I guess, what I'm trying to say. Some people won't go more than maybe 1 or 2 or 3 seasons back because I think at that point that their data doesn't mean as much, and this can be true. You look at the sports like the NFL, they've changed their rules so much over the last decade that looking back at the stuff from the 70s, 80s, and not even 90s doesn't quite match up to what's going on today because of the offensive rules that they've implemented. I'm more in the school of I like to have as much data as I can to let me make that decision. I like to see, whatever that theory or question I'm asking to go over as many sample sizes as possible, but I will look at the last few years as a telling sign of if it's continuing the sample that I'm seeing or the phenomena, or if it's starting to regress. Data is everywhere. I think that's an important thing. I think we live in a world in which information and data is all around us. You can get stats from pretty much any major news source now. It's relatively inexpensive, either because you're scraping it or you can buy it. Really what the key thing is now is once you've had that database and you clean it up, and it's pretty easy to do relatively. It might take you a few days to a month or two to get that, but you need a tool to analyze it. Now you can go to the Excel route, and there's no problem with that. And that's Microsoft Excel. It's way more technical than it needs to be. Something based like Bet Labs will improve your ability to quickly start asking questions without having to get this huge database we've already spent 10 years putting together. And this tool, which we spent years developing, you just press a few buttons and you're asking interesting questions based on insight that you see in the marketplace or on the field that you can then translate into the marketplace and make money on it. The next biggest thing to do after you have all the data, of course, is ask insightful questions. And this is really one of the key things of developing systems, is asking it, again, these insightful questions. You might have all the data in the world at your hands, but you're also going to have the ability to ask it the right things, to look for insight, And I think one of the questions we'll look at immediately to kind of highlight this, it's a very simple one, but do NFL home dogs win? All right, this is a very interesting question. I'm sure people have heard this throughout their betting years, and if you haven't, then you always hear home dogs or home dogs win in the NFL. It's like, okay, well let's prove that. Let's take the emotion out of it and let's look at it. And I'll quickly go over to my Bet Lab screen. I already have it myself logged in, and I'm not going to get too much into detail at this point, but up here you can name the system. You can see how recent systems have performed. You can see how current matches based on your systems. You can make them active or not active. You can see recent trends. You can get yourself an email alert, so any potential systems that are there, that you've already created, satisfying that, you'll get an email usually an hour before game time saying, "Bang, you have that ability right now to bet that game." So the question we were asking is, do NFL home dogs win? So NFL home dogs. I'll just name it that. You can name it whatever you want, but this will help you keep it organized. The sport, again, NFL. So here's the other sports that we have available right now. Of course, for the NFL, this is a spread bet. We're only interested at this point at ATS. It's against the spread stuff. It's game, but you can also do first and second half if we wanted to look at see how home dogs did in the first half of games. So you create a system, and that quickly brings me to the next screen, which is where I'll then add the filters into it. So what were we looking at? We were looking at NFL home dogs. So so I'll look favorite dogs. I find that filter on the left. Okay, I quickly see betting favorites is a losing proposition by a lot in the NFL, and this is based from 2003, season 2003 to just the last Monday night's game. So it's updated pretty much in real time. Betting dogs. Wow, I just went into this ridiculously easy system. I'd be profitable since 2003. Look, some of that was in the red, and you can kind of see what happened with the market. I think a lot of people jumped on this. Oh, home dogs are profitable, and it drove down the winning percentage, and then it has recently kind of transferred back or flipped back or corrected itself. So home dogs in the NFL is a fairly positive winning percentage. I think the other big thing I want to look at, is actually I'm just looking at underdogs. So I want to see home and away. So that's the other ingredient. So I want to do home dogs because that's what we saw versus just betting every underdog. You quickly see that home dogs are not positive. But wow, what is? Visiting dogs are undervalued in the sports betting world. And let's check this out and see how it graphs out. So again, we're looking at a team if it's an underdog, then if we look if they're visiting in a home, and whammo, you have an awesome sample size for the NFL. You get a great winning money one. The return on investment is very low because you're betting so many games. But right off the bat, we found some nice insight in the NFL world. This stuff is a little bit shaded towards dogs. There's value in betting dogs, and there's even more value when the dog is a visiting team. You see how the market has reacted to it. This wasn't doing so well in the first couple years, so 2004 to 2008-ish, and then all of a sudden it's flipped. It's become more positive, and you'll see trends like this all the time. Sometimes the market corrects itself or overcorrects itself. That's a system that, it's just something you can add in there. You've got some insight. Right off the bat in the NFL, there's some value in taking dogs and some value in taking visitors. When you're creating other systems, you kind of remember that in the back of your head. Say, I got a great opportunity here. Let me see if I just switch to visitors versus home teams, see if there's any improvement. And a lot of times you will find that signal to improve and clean up whatever system that you're betting on. So I guess at that we'll just move back to the presentation and go and finish up what we were talking about after that example. So, do NFL home dogs win? And I guess the short answer is no. NFL visiting dogs win, and we're able to easily see that and prove that out by looking back at data. That's hard, concrete information. That's not me just making this up. That's what the market is. You quickly have seen some great insight into the NFL market. Dogs have a little bit, and visitors also. Those two things coupled together really bring out a nice signal. So, winning traits of betting systems. First, as we did, start with an insightful question. Just ask it something that you've always heard, something that you think should be true. And that quickly will lead to, especially if it's high-level stuff, we'll just show you through the data what's going on. In that case, we looked at dogs and favorites, and quickly saw, well, dogs are a little bit more shaded to that. And we looked at visitors and home, and quickly saw that. So when we're creating systems, we're already starting from a really good position, knowing that's happening. Does it make real world sense? Yes. Your system should make real world sense. If you've cut your data to the point where you just found some anomaly out of 10,000 records, on Monday night and in the rain, against AFC teams, this team does well and they're 5-1. To me, that's really tough unless you can really prove why. And the sample size is so small. We'll talk about sample size some more, but really, what is a good sample size? It depends on the sport. Really, NFL, you have a different threshold. I would say 100 games is acceptable, I guess is the word. Some people might have more, but you're talking less than a few hundred you can even get once you add one or two filters because they play so few games. Versus the MLB, which you have thousands of games every season. So if you even just look at the last season's worth of data, you should be in the hundreds of games. And if you look back more than that, you should be in the thousands of games played that allow you more sample size. Good sample size, I guess we just hit a lot of that. Positive seasonal results, I like to see seasonality, that it wins consistently. You should have that really nice left to right graph. As you see it go up, it continually goes up every season. It's profitable. You didn't have that data blip in season 2 that had 50 units, and the rest of the time it hovered around 50-50. That to me is something you should look at, and you can quickly look at with Bet Labs through the graphs. Multiple systems indicating value on the same team. That is a great way to look at sports betting. It's the way we've really improved stuff at Sports Insights. We have multiple indicators or buckets that when they point to the same game, that's a very powerful trend for us versus one outlier that really likes this game and 3 or 4 don't. Sometimes they crisscross each other, and that even allows us to stay off games. But when you have 2 or 3 really good systems that you like, and say 3 of them, and all 3 of them are pointing towards this game, you feel really, really good about that, and you'll find yourself cashing a lot of winning tickets based on that. So just to summarize, at a real high level, there's a wealth of data and computing power available to everybody out there. There's no excuse why you shouldn't be taking advantage of it, and by taking advantage of it, you will be able to win a lot more money. The most important thing is asking the right questions and basically being creative, being analytical and creative in what you ask it. It's just a dumb computer that's giving you access to it, but it's really empowered you to kind of take it to the next level instead of just throwing darts and thinking about stuff. Spending 5 minutes in a program like Bet Labs, you can quickly prove out what you thought and get some great insight that maybe no one else has in the world and be able to profit from it. And of course, data-driven systems will make you a smarter and more successful bettor because you'll be using statistics, you'll be using emotion, non-emotion when you're betting games. It'll allow you to have a couple bad weekends and really believe in what you're doing to have a good season ultimately at the end of the year. I think that's very important for people to understand. And of course, email me with any questions, Dan at Sports Insights. Enjoy talking with members, and if you're not a member, if you have a question about the webinar or anything that we've done, I will use Bet Labs now to create a couple new systems and then field questions after that. So let me jump back into my Bet Labs system, and I'll go back into the dashboard. And so we start off with asking a question, correct? That's how we hit this thing. So, all right. One thing I've always wanted to look at, and maybe members in here will be more interested in this too, is bet against the public. Does betting against the public work in the NFL? Well, I don't know. There's one way to find out. So NFL, I'll name the system, bet against. Keep it real simple. Again, NFL spread bets is what we're interested in at this point. Game, and then I'll create my system. The filter we want to use is called public betting percentages for the spread, yes. So we'll click on that, and we go from 0 to 100. Really what I want to do is look at 30%. Let's even use 35%. You can quickly see right up here, I'll mostly focus on this right now, that there's no signal. I mean, it's basically 50-50. Which is not winning in sports betting. So there is, betting against the public at the 35% level. That's not going to help you win any money at the end of the day. Now, we heard betting against the public was a profitable thing. So, okay, well, let's see if we increase the ugliness of the team, so it's less favored by the public. We're starting to get a little better. The win percentage is up to 51%. So I'm going to edit it again and say, okay, well, we're getting somewhere. It's heading in the right direction, right? So what were we at? 25 last time? I think we're at 30. Let's hit 25. All of a sudden, we're in a positive relationship relative to, or almost at 52%. And now let's ratchet up one more. So 20. At the 20, so basically a team I'm betting on, only less than 20% of the public's bet on. These are really ugly teams that everybody hates, and now all of a sudden you're up to 56%. So by increasing the threshold, and really the signal is, you can make money betting bad teams. So as a team gets worse, your winning percentage goes up. That's a great indicator in my mind. You can't beat something like that when you actually believe or try to figure out what's going on and then ramp up the signal. You do really well. You see this nice left to right graph. The ROI is pretty decent, almost 10%, and that's because it only happens roughly, I don't know, you have to count the squares here, but we'll say 5 to 7 times a season, and basically it's probably averages a little less than one game a week. Now some people they don't want to, they can't wait for that. They need more games. They typically will have a lower return on investment because they want to put more money into action. Doesn't mean you ultimately may win more money at the end of the day. You just by having less opportunities, or more opportunities, you kind of hung yourself out there to make more money, but at the same point you've lost more money. But ultimately, your net gain is that. So that's a really interesting way to play with the data. Very simple system. We prove that it does work by ramping it up. We don't really get to, we can look at home and dogs. I guess we saw that phenomenon. So why don't we? Well, use that to our advantage. We know that, favorites and dogs is a little bit more swayed. Yes, it indicates that, but there's so few games in the favorite, it really doesn't matter. I mean, you've basically got rid of one and one. 2 games out of your sample size, and really that's because, think about it, how many favorites do you know or ever come across that the public's not betting? Never happens, especially at that high of a level, 80-20. They'd have to be the worst favorite team ever in the history of the game, and obviously it's only happened twice in the last roughly 8 seasons. So that increased us by 0.1%, which is always a nice thing, but it's not even something you would want to consider filtering out. So we'll move on to another system, that Thursday night one that I was originally talking about. So I'll go back to my dashboard and name the system, NFL Thursday nights. I'll just call it Thursday. Again, all the filters are the same because we're still thinking spread bet in the NFL. I don't need to change anything. I think the premise of it, so does this Thursday night, does the home team have an advantage, right? I think that's important. So what are we going to look at? We're going to look at, to make sure, probably should have done this for the other game. I don't think the betting percentage has taken that into effect, but we should immediately take out the time period and make sure we're dealing with just regular season games, right? We really don't want to mess around with preseason. That's just such an anomaly. Postseason stuff we're just going to stay away from because I don't think they play on Thursdays, so that's not going to matter that much. So the time period, the regular season, okay, now we need the game, time of day, nope, day of week, right? We're talking every game I ever played on Thursday. You see that the record's the same because it has nothing to pivot on, I guess. It doesn't know which team I want. It's just telling me, okay, if you bet every team in the on Thursday night, both sides, guess what? You come out with 50-50. Let's see, and then time of day, because I do want to clean it up a little bit and add just night games. Let's see. This uses military time, so we got to do it a little different. So it's 1900 and then 2300, which people are not in the military. That's 7 games starting between 7 and 11. Save my filter. So I got that. I guess Thursday nights. And now we have to figure out what to pivot it on. Okay, we wanted the home team, right? And that's probably the biggest thing we're going to add here. So you can see this scenario, if you bet on Thursday nights, the home team, you'd have a great record, 34-20, or if you're betting visiting team, you would have the flip side of that. So we'll save that filter and put ourselves in a really good situation, it kind of proved out what we thought. We thought on Thursday nights a home team has an advantage because they have, this is against the spread, of course. They have the situation in which they have an extra day of preparation. This is a great system, too, just because there's more Thursday night games than there ever have been because they're playing them every Thursday night. Before they really only played them in December, and then before that they would play it once a year. As you can see from the graph and the data points, it really very rarely happened, and then all of a sudden they started playing in December, and then you really start to take off this last season when they started playing a lot of games. So that's been a great thing to look at and prove out in the data. We want to see that, and seeing's believing, versus just making stuff up. Let's see, what else do we want to talk about? One more. People, one thing we talked about this year was the NFL bye week. All right, the premise is, do teams perform better coming off a bye week? Pretty standard thinking, but we'll see what the data proves and see if there's an opportunity to make money at. You may think logically yes, but you have to see that does the market already price that into it. So we call this NFL bye. Let's call it NFL bye week. Same thing, NFL spread. I'm looking at the game. Not worried about first halves. So I'll save that, and we'll quickly go through this. I want to do that one filter just to get the information that I want, time period. I want to keep that on regular season. Make sure we don't get anything confused with preseason stuff because that preseason stuff is ugly. Games. All right, so basically days between games. This is going to be the big filter for this one. So between 13 and 15 games. 15 days between games is what we're looking at, and already we see something really nice there. So teams coming off a bye, basically playing on the 14th day, win at a significantly bigger rate above, against the spread, which is 52.4%, and you quickly see that the great money won, and then the return on investment is close to 80%. Now we know from our early analysis, right? We talked about this stuff that there's a difference between dogs and favorites. So let's see if this thing plays out in our favor. There we go. So I want to look at how dogs and favorites have done coming off a bye week. And actually, the favorites have done better in this scenario, and I'll save that to clean up the data even more. But that kind of makes sense. It does make sense in my mind because think about it. You have a team that's already a better team than they're going to play this week, the coming up week or after a bye week, and they get an extra week to prepare to beat that team that they're better than. So it's almost they're being undervalued in that scenario. So if you get rid of the dogs coming off bye and you clean it up with the teams that are already, at least the market thinks they're better by making them a favorite, and they're coming off 2 weeks, an extra 2 weeks of preparation for that one team, you see this effect get magnified. And that's pretty incredible. By just adding one extra filter, and you still have a great sample size. It makes logical sense to me in the real world, which is really important. I just didn't add another filter in there just to add one. The money one's great. Your return on investment is 21%, and again, it's got almost 150 games. As a sample size, it should happen, enough probably each season. I mean, I'd have to do the math here, but it'd be a quick 8 to 9 games, so basically one every other week. Of course, the bye weeks only happen half the season, so that's most of your problem there. So basically, once the bye weeks come in, you pretty much should have 1 or 2 games for that, 7 to 8 week period, which I think is, a great system and very simple to do. So with that, I'll go over some questions. Kind of ran through a lot of this stuff just to give you guys a real high level what's available, how you create a system, the best practices. Again, start with a great, insightful question. Get yourself your hands on some data and an analysis tool like BetLabs that takes a non-technical user, and you just click a few buttons. There's no macro creating. There's no manipulation of the data from a very low level. It's very high level. Just click, add some filters. The filters on the left-hand side, I should probably talk about that. I see some people asking about statistics. What that is, those are team, those are offensive points, offensive yards, offensive pass passing yards, rushing yards for the offense, and then, of course, the defensive flip side. We offer this for at least two of the major sports, NBA and NFL. We're adding college as we speak. That should be here sooner than later, but right now it's not. That's the statistics. You can look at player information, add a specific or take away a specific player from a team, see how they've performed. Of course, the time period stuff is very interesting to use because it helps you even do time zone things. I know that's very I'd say it's a hot topic, but it's something people talk about. East Coast, West Coast teams playing each other. You can quickly manipulate the data and find that. You can do custom ranges. So if you just want to look at this season, great, or last season or specific time period. Of course, bet against the public stuff, which the only company in the world that has this information that goes back to 2007. It's based on 7 online sportsbooks information, line, opening, closing. I've seen some questions about that where you're using Pinnacle's opening lines and their closing lines. Of course, the strategy, it's kind of important that you'll see something like this, and you'll see what teams are available. You can see the past results. This probably won't say any current ones because we're not in a bye week scenario. But those are satisfying this situation. If it's built on line movement, let's go back to a system that's built on line movement. The NFL bet against would be a good one because it's based on, what the spread percentage is right now. And, of course, if the team's a dog, I'm more worried probably about this thing moving the next hour or two. So we'll see current game matches. All right, this what? Let's see. Let's play on St. Louis, KC, Miami, Tennessee, Washington. A lot of teams fit that bill right now, but I wouldn't worry about this until closer to game time. I'd have to go back into my live odds page and just see how close they are to this magic spread percentage. I guess they're saying what it is right now. So there's some really lopsided bet games. You can bet them now. Don't get me wrong if you want to get a good number, but it may not ultimately fall in your system because come Sunday, the action may balance itself out to a degree where these kind of huge public lopsidedness goes to a more realistic number. We'll say 70-30 versus 80-20 or 75-25, something like that. So that's important to note. Of course, if your thing's based on line movement, say opening, closing line, the difference between the two, and lines move for all kinds of reasons and throughout the week, and really, your stuff's based on closing information for the most part, unless it's an opening line system. But 90% of them probably are based on closing line scenarios. And know that it's Pinnacle, and ultimately, an hour before game time, Pinnacle moves their line 2 points. It might take your system off it, and that's just part of being a little more diligent, waiting to game time to bet those games, or be willing to be a little bit different than your system. What other kind of questions do we have here? Do you focus on units won or return on investment? That's a great question. It really it's kind of a cop-out of an answer, but it depends what kind of style of betting you like. It can be either. The more people like, great, this has won me a lot of money. That's all I care about. It gets the style of betting. Do you mind? Does it bother you to bet a lot of games? And to make a little bit of money, but you're making more money at the end of the week, or do you just want to bet a few games that win at a higher percentage, but you make less money at the end of the week? If that makes sense to you, hopefully it does. It's just simple. You're betting 2 or 3 games, and then you might win $50 versus you bet 25 games and you make $500. So it basically comes down to your style and what you want to do. I can't tell you one way or the other. I like to see, of course, both positive. Probably a respectable return on investment. Do I want to lay out thousands of dollars a day just to make a 1% return? I don't know. It depends on how excited I am about the system. But really, it's a scenario that you best do by yourself. Most novice bettors and most people that's more or less for their living will be interested in the return on investment to be high because they only want to bet a few games and they want those to be as good a chance of winning as possible. They don't want to lay out a system that's going to have a lot of plays every day because they have to keep on top of it. So that kind of helps a lot of people understand which one they should look for. But of course, you want enough opportunities that you can probably have a play a week, a play a day, depending on the sport. What would be let's see, what is a good sample size? I think I kind of hit on that before, but I'll just stress it because it is important. It really depends on the sport. Something that's important that would work. I'll look at let's look at the NFL. I think something in the 1 to 200 range of games as sample is a pretty decent thing, especially if you're seeing a nice signal with it. Let's look at MLB, which is a totally different ball game. go in our suggested systems that these come with it. This is MLB bet against the public, but you'll see it's massive. It's just a very simple, this is the 80-20 rule in baseball. And you see a little bit lower ROI, but you see a lot of money won, and you see a lot of opportunities to win money. So, sample size for something like this should be definitely in the hundreds of games for baseball. And football, you'd be lucky if you'll get something that's it's in the 1 to 200 range, whereas baseball you can get in the thousands really very easily. And that's kind of a little secret too, or I guess something that people should understand, that if you want to be good at any sport, in terms of your handicapping or your system, I always tell people baseball, you get awesome opportunities. There's so many throughout the year. Your samples, your data, it goes back, centuries for the most part. You can, if you're going to be good at it, you'll just have more opportunities to make money at it. Whereas NFL is a lot of fun to watch, and it's the #1 bet sport out there, but it's just once a week. There's just, so many weeks in the year, and there's so few opportunities. Where you look at baseball, even basketball is pretty good too. You can really, really put yourself in a positive light if you just have a little bit of an edge, because you're magnifying it over thousands of games or just hundreds of games. Again, the data works better. You can look back further, and then the opportunities are more plentiful once you do find something. So a lot of people, don't want to hear that, but at the same point, that's how it is. How often are our systems updated? So anything you see in Bet Labs is updated pretty much in real time, probably within minutes after the game ends. It will grade it out, and then of course put all the new information in there. Once we get our data load, I think they might even update it in games. If not, right after the game ends, you'll see all the team statistics added up, getting ready for the next tomorrow's game. Your current matches will immediately start populating. So you can see what's going on right now. Some of my systems are ready for playing the Bobcats this week today. What sports are included in the $99 trial? That's a great question. All the sports we have available. Basically, you have all access pass to this. So you see the NBA, MLB, NHL, which of course is in a lockout right now. College football and basketball are all available to you. And somebody's asking about first and second half data. Yes, hopefully you saw that in the presentation, but we have access to that same information for that. Let's see. So where do we get our betting data? I mean, just from years of doing this, I guess tracking it over the years, just putting stuff in our database. We've found databases in other places. We bought some. We have data providers. We go to websites that have specific stuff that we want. We put it together, and we spent a lot of time and effort to make sure it looks good and is correct. But just massive years, and we're always adding to it. I think you'll see a lot of new filters come in for Bet Labs that you may or may you probably hopefully be able to take advantage of in a positive way. So I think I got a few more questions, but most of them people want me to answer specific system questions. In this case, they want me to look at how a team's done after they've been blown out the night before, say if they lost by 20 points. That's interesting. I'd love to look at it, but I'm not going to sit here and go through every one. I really want people to jump into the Bet Labs. If that's the stuff you want to get, that's exactly what it's here for. If that gets to be confusing and you're having problems with it, let us know. There's guys here that love talking to you about creating your own system, showing you how. Hopefully this presentation is really you'll hit the ground running, and you'll go in there and you'll start using it and asking it questions. And really, that's how you get to understand it, is by using it. There's no kind of wizardry here. If you have those, this is a great opportunity again with the $99 membership to try it, fool around with it, answer your own questions, and then hopefully continue with this as a member. And once you see the power of it, and it improves your bottom line, which is what we want. I think you'll quickly see that happening, and you'll enjoy being part of the kind of this data revolution and the betting systems, and you'll really improve your overall win percentage and your handicapping. So with that, I will say goodbye. Thanks again for attending today's data-driven betting systems. We're looking forward to having more webinars. I think the pace of them will probably be like once a month. So if you have interesting topics, something you want me to discuss, definitely submit them. A lot of this is user-generated. We like to hear from our members and people listen to these things, what you want to hear, so I can put something together and, if it's in my area of expertise, and talk about it. So I appreciate it again. Thanks for coming. Goodbye.